We start the Shiur as we always do. Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelik le'olam haba. All of the Jewish people have a share in the world to come. Shenemar, it quotes the pasuk in Yeshaya, Va'amei kulam tzadikim, your entire nation is righteous. La'olam yirshu oretz, they shall forever inherit the land. Neitzer mata'ai, they are the branch of my planting. Ma'aseh yodai lehispa'er, they are the work of my hands that bring glory to the name of Hashem. We make a Kiddush Hashem. We are picking off where we left off. Last year, the last time we learned Perek Daled, the last Mishnah we learned was the first Mishnah in Perek Daled. Today, we are beginning the second Mishnah in Perek Daled. The first Mishnah was the famous Mishnah of Ben Zoma, who said, Ezehu Asher, Ezehu Gibor, Ezehu Chacham, and so on and so forth. And now we are beginning with his friend Ben Azai. Notice both of them were known by the names of their parents, not by Horav. They weren't called Rabbi. We'll see why soon. Ben Azai Omer. Ben Azai says, and I emphasize once again, the translation here said, but anyone who knows grammar knows that Omer doesn't mean said, but Omer means is saying, because it's Lashon Hoveh. It's like Holech, Korei, Sholeach, Kosev, always a present tense verb, because Ben Azai, despite the fact that he's no longer physically alive, is speaking to us right now from this particular Mishnah. And Ben Azai says, Heveirotz lemitzvah kala kivachamura. Run to a mitzvah kala. Now the translation of the word kala, the word kal means light. So therefore the translation of Heveirotz lemitzvah kala kivachamura means run to a light mitzvah, like to a strict mitzvah, like to an important, a chomor, kal v'chomer, easy and hard, light and difficult. So run to an easy mitzvah, just like a difficult mitzvah. Ubareach min ha'aveira, and flee from doing any sin. It's interesting. I'm going to point a few things out here. We're not going to get to them today, I don't think today, but I'm pointing out some very interesting points. Number one, what is a mitzvah kala? How do you know which mitzvah is a kala or a chamura? Don't we say in another perek, Eina to yodea matan schar shel mitzvahs? You don't know the relative reward of a mitzvah. So how do you know which mitzvah is kal and which one is chamur? We'll have to deal with that. Next, it says when it comes to doing a mitzvah, it says rutz. You are to run to the mitzvah. Why can't you just walk to the mitzvah? Why do you have to run to the mitzvah? Is it going anywhere? Is it trying to get away from you? And then it says, Uboreach min ha'aveira, and flee, run away from any sin. Why do you have to flee from the sin? So we're going to have to talk about that as time goes on. The next statement that is coming from Ben Azai, he says, the reason I want you to run to an easy mitzvah like to a difficult mitzvah and to flee from an aveira is because shemitzvah goreres mitzvah. Because one mitzvah causes another. One mitzvah causes goreres, like goremes. One mitzvah drags. Gorer literally means to drag. Those of us who learn the Daf Yomi know that we learn that Rabbi Shimon said, Gorei Adam Kisei Mita V'Safsal, that a person is allowed to drag a bed or a bench in the ground on Shabbos, Uvad Shalo Yiskavein Las Charitz, as long as he doesn't have intention to make a hole in the ground. That's Rabbi Shimon's opinion. So Gorer means to schlep or to bring. So mitzvah goreres mitzvah, one mitzvah brings or schleps along and drags along another mitzvah, the aveira goreres aveira. And one aveira causes or brings along in its wake another aveira. Why is that? Why does that happen? So Ben Azai takes it a step further. He says, Sheschar mitzvah mitzvah, because the reward of one mitzvah is another mitzvah. That's interesting. Uschar aveira, and the reward, or now I guess we could even say the payback, because the word schar means payment. Uschar aveira, aveira, and the payment for one sin, one transgression, is another transgression. Okay, so this is Ben Azai's statement. Let's go to find out who was Ben Azai. Why was he so called? His father's name must have been Azai, because he's called Ben Azai. Why wasn't he called Harav something Ben Azai? So Ben Azai happens to be one of the four people who are mentioned in the Gemara in Chagiga and Daf Yud Daled. There's a famous Gemara that people quote quite often. Arba nichnas lepardes. There were four who went into the orchard. Now, we know when we use the word pardes, the word orchard means the various ways in which the Torah is explained. Because the Torah is like an orchard. It's got all kinds of fruit trees, all kinds of different trees. And the four types of trees that are in the orchard are hinted to by the word pardes. The word pardes means an orchard. What are those four trees? Those four trees are as follows. The pei means pshat. The resh means remez. Pardes means drush, homiletics. And samach means sod, secret. There is a plain pshat to all of the psukim in the Torah. Then there is a remez, that the pasuk is hinting towards something. It doesn't say it right out, but it hints to it. And you have to go see what the hint is. Then there's drush. There's the ability to take a statement and make a drasha out of it. Make something that will give a homiletical interpretation. And the word homiletical interpretation implies that what you're doing is learning some human value that you can apply in your life that will elevate your life in some way. It's homiletical. And there are many examples of that. We don't have time to go into it right now. We'll give you an example a little bit later, maybe. And then comes sod. Sod means secretive, buried in there, like Kabbalah and other things, which are secrets. There are many secrets in the Torah. There are many secrets in the Torah that when you analyze them, you will see the secret jumps out at you. Rashi gives an example of a secret. I'll give you an example of a secret. Where do we know that there is such a thing as Tchias HaMesim? Where is Tchias HaMesim mentioned in the Torah? You can search high and low in the psukim of the Torah to find where is the resurrection of the dead, of the righteous. Where is it hinted to in the Torah? Now, if you know Rashi, you're going to be able to answer it, because it's a pasuk we say every single day, at least twice a day. It says, "L'man yirbu yameichem," so that your days will be lengthened, ubenei beneichem, and the days of your children's children, al ha'adamah, on the land. Asher nishba Hashem lavoseichem, that Hashem swore to your fathers, laseis lahem, to give to them. He's going to give it to them. Kimei hashemayim al eretz, like the days of the heavens on the earth. So in other words, Rashi says, wait a minute. It says here that your days will be lengthened on the land which Hashem swore to give to your fathers, lavosechem, and then it says laseis lahem, to give it to them. It doesn't mean to you. It doesn't say laseis lachem, to give to you. No, it says laseis lahem, to give to them, to give it to Avram, to Yitzchak, to Yaakov, to give to their children and their children, to give to our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our great-grandparents in Russia, in Poland, in Germany, in Spain, in South Africa, wherever they came from the Middle East, the Far East, doesn't matter. All of those people would have given their right hand to come and see that the land will be given to the Jewish people. And here it says it's not just going to be given to their ancestors, to their progeny, to the next generation. It says it's going to actually be given to them. To them. How are they going to get it? They're not here now. Oh, says Rashi. Mikan, from here we learn, Shetchias HaMesim in HaTorah. This is the proof, because the Torah says to give to them. The Torah says to give to them, that they are going to get it. That means they're going to come here. And but they, in other words, one day we're going to take a trip to Eretz Yisrael, or we're going to go live there. And we're going to go daven one day by Hara Moriah. And we're going to walk there. And we're going to see an elderly gentleman with a lot of people around him. And we're going to ask, Welche Rebbe is this? Which Rebbe is this? Not a Rebbe. That's Avraham Avinu. That's Yitzchak Avinu. That's Yaakov Avinu, Loseis Lahem, to give to them. It's not just to you. It's actually going to be given to them. And we're going to meet them there, because that's what the proof is. So, that being the case, there are 4 ways to interpret the Torah, and one of them is Sod. And there were 4 people, says the Gemara. Arba nichnas lepardes. 4 went into this orchard. And I'll tell you who the 4 were. Ben Azai was one. Ben Zoma was another one. Elisha ben Avuya, who was known as Acher, was the 3rd one. And Rabbi Akiva was the 4th one. Take a look at that Gemara on Yudal Rama Beis Chagiga. And over there in Chagiga, the Gemara tells us, Ben Zoma, you know what happened to Ben Zoma? Ben Zoma hates it. Ben Zoma looked into this Pardes. Ben Zoma looked into the Pardes. And you know what happened when he looked in? I'll tell you what happened. The Nitrefa. Then Vames. Ben Azai hates it Vames. Ben Azai looked into the secretive place where Hashem is. He looked into what was known over there in the Gemara Chagiga as the Maaseh Merkava. He looked into the, so to speak, chariot of Hashem. He looked into it. Vames. He died from looking at things he shouldn't have looked at, says the Gemara. Ben Zoma hates it. Ben Zoma looked in to that philosophical conundrum of the so-called chariot of Hashem, because it's not a real thing. It's a so-called nevuah, representing different things, because ein lo demus haguf. Hashem doesn't have a body. There ain't no guf. He doesn't have any physicality. So Ben Azai looked and died. Ben Zoma looked, v'nitrefa daito, and he went out of his mind. Because here's a puzzle. You want to play with your mind and go out of your mind? It's an easy, simple way to do it. Think of defining and visualizing infinity. You can't. The human mind is finite. The human mind is limited. The human finite mind cannot fathom infinity. It's strange. We have a word for it. How do we have a word for something that we can't even imagine? It's impossible. How did anybody come up with such a word if he couldn't imagine it? That's because the Torah has such a word. There is a word in the Torah for infinity. It's Hashem's name. Yud Kei Vav Kei. The letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei make up Haya, always was, Hoveh, always is, and Yihiyeh, always will be. Hashem told us there's infinity. Otherwise, we wouldn't know. It's impossible to conjure up something that's beyond our experience. And consequently, what happened was that Ben Zoma looked into infinity and it was nitra fadaito. You can't, and he tried to understand. How do you understand Tzaddik Varalo? Rabbi Akiva said that Tzaddik Varalo, how do we understand it? How do we understand Tzaddik Varalo, Rosh Hashanah? How do we know? How do we understand? Like Rabbi Akiva said, Hakol Tzafui for Shus Natun. Everything is known, and yet free will is there. How can you reconcile these two contradictory, impossibly to recognize things? To reconcile. How can you do it? It's impossible. So Rabbi Akiva said, yeah, you can think it's impossible, but they exist. It exists. Just like Hashem exists. It exists. We can't imagine it. We can't figure it. We can't put it in our minds, but it exists. And so when Ben Zoma went into the Pardes, he went out of his mind. Acher, when it came to the third one, Elisha ben Avuya, when he looked into it, Elisha ben Avuya looked into the concept that went beyond his understanding. What it says is, Kitzetz benetios. He cut down the plantings. He became an apikores. He became a denier, a sinner. He did so much wrong, even though he had tremendous respect for his Rebbe Meir. And Rebbe Meir, there's a discussion over there in the Gemara whether he did or did not bring him back to tshuva. There is a discussion. Maybe he did. Maybe he finally brought him back to tshuva, because there are two opinions there in the Gemara. But Elisha ben Avuya went off his rocker, and he cut down the branches, the plantings, and he went the wrong way. And Nebuch ended up with great sorrows. The fourth one was Rabbi Akiva. And the Gemara says about Rabbi Akiva, he was the one who was Yotza B'Shalva. He went out with tranquility because he knew the boundaries and he was able to tell us the boundaries. So Ben Azai was one of those four. Ben Azai was one of the four that went into the Pardes, and he never lived beyond that. And that's why he never was married, although there is a Gemara that says that he wanted to marry Rabbi Akiva's daughter. In fact, according to the Pshat in the Gemara, he even got engaged to her, but ultimately couldn't keep it because his mind was so fiery and involved in the study of Torah, he couldn't imagine giving up his life for a family life. Was he right? This is not my judgment call. But the Gemara didn't like it, and Ben Azai ultimately died. But before he died, and when he was known as this great Talmid Chacham, in fact, the Gemara at the end of Sota calls Ben Azai the Shoked al Dalsos Hashem. He was the one like the almond, Shkediyah, which is eager. The Gemara over there at the end of Sota says, Mishemes Ben Azai, when Ben Azai died, Mesu Hashakdonim, there were no longer any people who had the quality of being shoked, of being eager to be the first one of the base medrash to go and learn. No one else equaled Ben Azai's shkediyah, his ability to be shoked al dalsos atorah. In fact, the medrash in Shir Hashirim says that one day Ben Azai was learning. And the Talmidim came running to Rebbe Akiva and they said, Rebbe, Ben Azai is learning. And all around him, there's a fire, a wall of fire. Something's happening. What's going on? There's a wall of fire. So Rebbe Akiva came running. And he said to Ben Azai, he said, what are you doing? So Ben Azai said, what do you mean, what am I doing? I'm learning Torah. And I'm imagining in my mind that study of Torah that I'm learning is so deep. I'm getting mamish to Ma'amad Har Sinai. I'm putting myself back in the tradition, going all the way back, parent to child and Rebbe to teacher 300 years ago. And I'm going back and I'm mamish standing at Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, the pasuk says, that the mountain was surrounded with fire. And that's the fire that Ben Azai was creating with his study of Torah. He was such an unbelievable masmid in Torah, and yet he's still known only as Ben Azai. Now, why do I go through who Ben Azai was in order to understand what he said? Because when you realize who Ben Azai was, you can understand why it says Omer, saying, meaning this was something that was always on the tip of his tongue, on his lips when he spoke. This is something you always heard from him. You always heard this. You heard Ben Azai would tell his Talmidim, Ben Azai would tell people, Ben Azai would tell everybody, have a rotz l'mitzvah kalika v'chamura. Run to do an easy mitzvah, just like a hard mitzvah. People sometimes take it upon themselves. Oh, it's a tough mitzvah. That I'm going to do. These easy ones I don't bother with. So he says, no, runs to the easy ones like the hard ones, because and ubarech min avera, run away from avera. She mitzvah gores mitzvah, avera gores avera. Sheschar mitzvah mitzvah, schar avera avera. So we have to know who Ben Azai was. That's one reason. We have to know. The second reason is because throughout Pirkei Avos, from the very beginning of the first parak, straight through now in the fourth and then the fifth and even the sixth, we're going to see that the tradition of the Jewish people, the linchpin, one of the linchpins of the authenticity and veracity of the Torah, is its parent to child, Rebbe to student, generation to generation, unbroken chain transmission. And Ben Azai was a link in that chain. And the transmission of all that Ben Azai stood for is with us today, 2,000 years later, because Ben Azai lived like the time of Rabbi Akiva. In fact, he was a Talmud Chover with Rabbi Akiva. He was together with Rabbi Akiva at the same time, and he was a Talmud of Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya, who preceded Rabbi Akiva. And he learned together with Rabbi Akiva. In fact, Rabbi Akiva and he, like I said before, almost became father-in-law and son-in-law. It didn't quite pan out, according to one interpretation. But the fact is, he was at the same time, which was a little bit after the Churban, a little after the destruction, which was 2,000 years ago. So we're talking, Ben Azai just spoke to us. It's not just that we're reading something. We're hearing Ben Azai's voice. He's saying to us, run to an easy mitzvah, just like a difficult mitzvah. Now, I want to take a moment to explain one of the interesting ways that this particular Mishnah was read in a most unusual fashion. Over 150 years ago, in the middle 19th century, a little less than 150, 130 years ago, 140 years ago, at the same time that Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch was the Rav in Frankfurt am Main, there was a chief rabbi in Romania, in the city of Bucharest. Everybody knows him. Meir Leibush ben Yechiel Michael, the Malbim. The Malbim was elected as the chief rabbi of Bucharest. Now, when the people in Bucharest were looking for a chief rabbi, already the wayward movements, especially of reform, were beginning to give out their foolish misinterpretations and ideas, which every traditional Jew from Rabbi Akiva down to today knew was the recipe for the destruction of the Jewish people, which sure enough we saw. Nevertheless, the people in Romania were being influenced by the so-called Enlightenment. This Enlightenment was really for the Jewish people a very dark thing. There's nothing wrong with knowledge. There is nothing wrong with art. There is nothing wrong with music. There is nothing wrong with highfalutin expressions of thinking, painting, visualizing. There's nothing wrong with any of these things if it's not misused to go against the laws of the Torah. But the Enlightenment was used as a way to disparage those who were loyal to the Torah as if they lived in the dark ages. They still do it today. You'll find newspaper articles today. There was recently an article by someone who calls himself a rabbi blaming the numbers of deaths in the coronavirus epidemic on the backward thinking of Talmudic scholars because they don't go to college and understand humanity. Ashtus. It's exact opposite. Exact opposite. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that too much today. Let's go further. In Romania, in Bucharest, in the middle of the 18th century, Reform had grabbed a hold. And yet, the traditional forms of Judaism were extremely powerful. And so, when they needed a new chief rabbi, applications were accepted, and people started recommending this one, that one, no, and all kinds of rabbis were proposed. And then somebody proposed the Malbim, Meir Leibish ben Yechiel Michael, and the community went after him, and they asked him questions and so on, and they analyzed his brilliance. They saw his brilliance. Not only did they see his brilliance in Torah, but the Malbim was a poet, a philosopher, a man of deep thinking, someone who was able to crunch every idea and make sense out of it, and wrote in beautiful poetic form all about these things. And they said to themselves, he may be a Torah scholar and therefore a little bit too right-wing for us, but a man who's such a poet, a man of letters, how could he be so frum? He can't be too religious. We'll hire him because he's going to be the right one. And they hired the Malbim. And were they wrong? Because they hired the biggest firebrand for the authenticity of the tradition of the Torah, for the emes, for Hashem Elokeichem emes. And he fought to keep that emes, just like Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch did in that same century. And he was successful to a degree that the reformers couldn't stand. And ultimately, I want to tell you what they did, and it's brought down in the history books. They went to the government and told the government he's a spy trying to overthrow the government, and they testified in court against him. He should be sentenced to death. Ultimately, they didn't sentence him to death, but he was sent into exile. There's the so-called nice, brotherly, loving reformers. Anyway, the Malbim was once asked the question, and here's where we come in over here. The Malbim was asked the question, Rabbi, we want to make a charity event to raise money for tzedakah. And we want to have social dancing at that event. That men and women, like the current trend is, should dance together. But it's for charity, Rabbi. So it's for a great mitzvah. And therefore, where does it say in the Torah? Show me a sentence in the Torah that says you can't do that. After all, it's for a mitzvah. And even though it may be a rabbinic slight transgression, but it's for a mitzvah. And there's nowhere in the Torah that says you can't do it for a mitzvah. So the Malbim said to them, let me ask you something. There may not be a sentence in the written law, but if I showed you something from the ethics of the fathers, if I showed you something from Pirkei Avos, ethics of the fathers, that prohibited it, would you go along? Oh, Rabbi, the ethics of the fathers, if you could show us a sentence from ethics of the fathers, instantly we would follow because we are very ethical people. And you show us where it says that's forbidden, we'll buy into it. And they thought they knew Pirkei Avos, so they said there's nothing there and we're safe. So the Malbim took out this Mishnah. And he read it to them, but not the way we read it. Listen to the pure ignorance that the people had when the Malbim read this Mishnah. And they said, oh, if that's the case, I guess we have to give in. And here is how the Malbim read this Mishnah. Ben Azai Omer. Ben Azai says, Heveirotz lemitzvah kala kivachamura uvareach min ha'avera. Run to an easy mitzvah like a hard mitzvah. Because mitzvah, and he what he did is, he now put the words similar to what we learned in another Mishnah, she mitzvah avera, goreres avera. He skipped the line and he brought it in another Mishnah. She mitzvah avera, goreres avera. Because one mitzvah and an avera brings about another avera. They said, ooh, we never realized that that's the way to read that sentence. And if that's the way you have to read it, that you should be careful about an easy mitzvah and run away from an avera shemitzvah goreres, and run away from an avera. That's what he said. Uboreach min avera shemitzvah goreres. Run away from an avera that's caused by a mitzvah. Because, and then he read mitzvah va'avera goreres avera, because a mitzvah and an avera causes another avera. So he brilliantly read the sentence like this: Benazai omer heveratz mitzvah kalaka v'chamura. Run to an easy mitzvah like a hard mitzvah. Uboreach min ha'avera shem mitzvah goreres, and run away from an avera that's caused by a mitzvah. And he stopped there, and then he said, because mitzvah va'avera goreres avera, because a mitzvah together with an avera causes another avera, and therefore you can't make a dinner dance to raise money for charity, because that's a mitzvah avera, which is goreres avera. And they said, oh, profound. You hear this? The Amaratzis, and he proved it to them, and that's the brilliance of the Malbim. And that's one interpretation of why it's so important to know the Mesorah, because otherwise you can read psukim like Ashrei Yoshrei, Veisecha Od, Yahalucha Sela B'chol, and you won't know what you're talking about, because it'll be so totally out of sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. Absolutely nothing. Uchsavtam, and you should write them, Al Mezuzah Veisecha Uvesharecha V'hoya. Does that make any sense? Absolutely not. So if you don't know the tradition of where the comma goes, of how to pronounce the words, of how to put them in, if you don't know the Torah Shebek Bal Peh, you have nothing to do with Torah Shebek Sav, and the whole thing is lost. And therefore, Ben Azai left us a gem, as he did in other places, as we'll see. Ben Azai Omer, Eveirotz the mitzvah kalaka v'chamura, run to an easy mitzvah like a hard mitzvah. Ubarech min avera, run away from any avera, because mitzvah goreres mitzvah, avera goreres avera. That's why. Sheschar mitzvah mitzvah, schar avera avera. Yeshkoyach ben Azai, for this beautiful, beautiful teaching. Despite the fact that you didn't live long, your teachings are forever. It is now 2,000 years later, and we're still learning them, and we're growing from them, and we're developing from them. And we see the brilliance in them, because the tradition of the Jewish people went back to Ben Azai, went back to Rabbi Akiva, and went back all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. And that's why the Pekei Avos begins with Moshe Kibel Torah Mi Sinai. And today we learned this beautiful Mishnah, the beginning of it. And tomorrow night in Yetz Hashem at 7:45, we're going to continue. Before you go, I'd like to mention that we have partnered over the years with a Shmiras Haloshin group. Many people might not know about it, but there are 2 slots available if you'd like to join in. Now, it works like this. There are 2 hours a day in which, just for those 2 hours, we take every opportunity not to say any Lashon Hara. If you would like to sign on for that, there's no payment for it, but you do get the schar of that Shmiras Haloshin. There are 2 slots available. One slot is from 10 to 12 at night, and one slot is from 4 to 6 p.m. Anyone who'd like to join and be filling in one of those slots, we need one person for the 10 to 12 p.m. slot and one person for the 4 to 6 p.m. slot. And for 2 hours, they will not speak any Lashon Hara. This is part of a program that I started over 25 years ago in the Young Israel Bethel of Borough Park. And you're more than welcome to join it. I spoke today to Mrs. Packman, who runs this particular endeavor and has partnered with us. And we have Baruch Hashem, other people from the Young Israel for all these years who have kept these slots, but these slots are now available. So if you'd like to join in, you have to let me know, or I'll give you a number, 718-851-6491. And I will post that Amir Hashem on an email this week. So for those, anyone who'd like to join, please.
From 10 to 12?
10 to 12 at night, which for some people is very easy not to speak Lashon Hara.
I'll take that.
Okay, you'll let me know. And there is one other requirement, which is you learn one halacha a day of Shmiras Halashon. That's the other requirement.
But my problem is I can't get that book now.
You can go online. You'll have go online. You have a computer. You just go to the Chofetz Chaim website where it says a lesson a day, and you'll have in 2 seconds you'll have one line which will teach it, and then you've done the job. It's as easy as that.
I'm serious.
Okay, good. So which slot do you want, the 10 to 12 slot?
Yeah.
Okay, you got it. And then there's a 4 to 6 p.m. slot.
12, you learned that the Shmiras Halashon.
Yeah, it's online. You go to the Chofetz Chaim website. You'll have any one of 20 books you want to learn one halacha a day. No question about it. You can get it. It's there.
No problem.
Okay, Rabosai, we are now going to learn our Mishnayos.
Shkoyach, Rebbe.
Shkoyach to you, Beryl, for signing up. Anybody